Gracious introduction. I'm Robert Firpo Cappiello. I'm the co-author of the restaurant technology study. I have the privilege to work on it with Professor Sunny Kim, Professor of Hospitality at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. It is truly a privilege to have such an amazing collaborator in writing the survey that many of you answered, and then gleaning the insights, which we'll be sharing today. So John set us up nicely. We're going all in. And these gentlemen will share a bit of what that means. I'm going to kick it off with an important piece of data. This year's survey found that IT budgets average 2.44% of revenue. It sounds small, but it's significantly up from last year when that same number was like 1.97 a year ago. It means a number of things, and we'll be digging into that today. One thing I'd like to underscore, though, is that we are finally sort of redefining technology ROI. It is not always a one-to-one. Will it make us money now, as much as it speaks to all kinds of new priorities? And I feel that number is important to bear in mind. We're going to kick off our discussion taking a look at a quick overview of the financial outlook. Three important pieces of data here. 58% of our respondents, restaurant operators, reported that their tech budgets will go up in 2023. Great number. 21% of restaurants, their IT budgets will go up by 10%. So that's significant. And only 38% reported that their budgets would stay the same. A little bit of detail there before we start our discussion. In a lot of cases, we're seeing significant new investment in analytics, location-based marketing, digital menu boards, and personalized communication. So part of what we mean by all in is this sort of movement toward, where we all want to be. We're seeing significant investments there. I'd like to kick off the discussion with Courtney Radke. Some of these investments that I've identified they're disrupting sort of some of the legacy applications and infrastructure. We're curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, what we see, a lot of the investment really is in kind of that MURTEC and digital, and it's really for good reason. That's what's driving the business, and that's what allowing you to create that revenue stream to then feed into everything else from a technology standpoint inside of the restaurant. But what we see is those are kind of at odds with the infrastructure, what we call, it's called legacy or foundational infrastructure that actually runs these stores, the spaghetti wires, if you will. They weren't built to integrate with the future in most cases. And so what we're seeing is this technology is deployed, it's supposed to boost the customer experience, it's supposed to create more frictionless experiences and all of these things, but it's at odds with the technology that was deployed probably 5, 7, 10 years ago. So those long-lived assets, they don't get replaced at the same speed as you can build a new mobile app or you can build a new integration with a POS system. So we see that being a challenge, but what we're also seeing is now that we're in this world of, we know everything's going to be API driven, we know everything's going to be cloud-based or container-based, things like that. Now the foundational architecture that gets put in the next time has that in mind. They know that it has to be forward-thinking, feature-rich, and future-proof to support these new applications and systems that's going to drive the next generation of customer experiences.
Mm-hmm. Great. I just wanted to point out, we've done some prep, and not every panelist will be addressing every set of data. It's sort of their choice. So I just wanted to put that out there. Mike, you have thoughts about this financial outlook, the increasing budget, and specifically some of these newer investments.
Yeah, I mean, just to dovetail on what you said, which is exactly true, just as a solution architect who actually gets in there and designs this stuff. In the weeds, and just also understanding what the customer wants is, there's an understanding out there that with the technology allows for a decommoditization of the product, and that's why I think what's driving a lot of the budget, where you can now have a product that may be identical in terms of what the actual product is, but by making the experience for the user so much better than your competitor, or at least you want to be keeping up or be at the forefront, that they'll come and visit you as that way to get that product, because it's done in such a way that, whether it's a part of the loyalty, whatever it is, it's this frictionless process that makes them feel special. I sometimes think about it like we've all been in that situation where you are a customer and then suddenly you feel depowered, like maybe you're going to pick up your food, right? And you're sitting there and it's like nobody's come out yet. Why haven't they come out? When do I have to go in and talk to somebody? It's very depowering. But now with this technology, it allows you to get to that point where, hey, I always have a good experience when I go here. I press a button. And it's like one of the things when I'm designing a network, what I try to look at, define technology as great power with little effort. And that's for the end user. Like, it's a lot of hard work going into it to design it, but you always want to have that in mind, right? So back in the Star Trek days, you thought of technology as a lot of blinking lights, but now you think of it as I press a button, I take over the world. So
cool. And Peter, I know you have thoughts on this. So I think we're going to get to your thoughts on the next data set. So thank you, Courtney and Mike. The next data set is the allocation of IT budgets. This ratio has stayed relatively consistent over the several years I've worked on this study, with the lion's share going to maintaining existing solutions for all the reasons we know. 24% this year will be spent on rolling out new implementations, and only 7% for R&D. But I know you guys have some interesting ideas about how it's not like I get depressed when I see like it's so much going to maintaining. But these guys have some interesting thoughts about that. Mike, we're gonna stick with you on this, and then I know Peter has some thoughts.
Well, I think going back to what I said, it all goes back to like we now see what this technology can do to really that ROI for the business through the customer's experience, decommoditizing our product. But after that, it's about, and again, going back to something that you said earlier, is this process of understanding that we need to be tying all these different technologies together. And how are we going to do that? So we got legacy gear that may not have APIs. So one of the things that I do is sometimes go in and work with customers that do have the legacy, and then maybe, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but sometimes you may have to go to the CLI and kind of just get what you can now, but then work with that process going forward. And it's just upon creating that environment that allows for that creativity, but then also, again, going back to your point of how can we get away from that? And then like Trey, again, it's like one of the high-end, we're pulling away from hardware. So the ability to do that and really push in that direction, understanding that if it's software-based, we can be very flexible. I think of it a lot like painting your house. So say like you have a house that you've painted that's like, it's the color of the day, it's in the 70s and whatever it is, and then you're done, right? So then you get this, and then 5 years later, that's out of fashion, and now you have to like pay all this money to repaint it. But what happens if you could use something like you do for Christmas, right? Where you put up the lights. What happens if you could just put a box in front of the house and change the color of the house whenever you wanted to, automatically? And that is really how you want to think about when you're architecting and designing your network, is like, okay, if I do this, not only I want to be able to plug into all these different pieces, but I also want to be able to switch it on a dime. And so I think of it like that analogy of, so again, going back to that no hardware.
Yeah, it's a nice setup. And Peter, I know you have thoughts about how R&D isn't always necessary to accomplish goals.
I do. So first of all, I'm Peter Kellis. I'm the founder and CEO of Tray. Let me tell you a little bit about Tray so everything else I say makes sense. We're a cloud-based point-of-sale system that is hardware agnostic. So we're Android-based. We can replace your operating system. Let's say you have Windows or on your existing POS, get rid of that, put Android instead, and provide a modern cloud-based system that's open API, software only, like you were talking about, et cetera. My accent is Greek and French, so you guys don't wonder the whole time.
Very exotic.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm from Greece, went to high school in France, been in the US since college. So that's what we hear from our customers too, is that they have made investments in technology. They don't have a huge amount of money to spend on new R&D, but they do want to upgrade customer experience. they want to upgrade their system to the next generation. I'll tell you a story of a customer that we have called Arctic Circle. They have 80 locations or so, and they had not a huge R&D budget, but they wanted to move to a new POS. And what we're able to do with that, they use an old system called SAMS4, and they have different processors, and they have different types of hardware in their stores. So it's a kind of a mess. They want to make a change, but they don't want to rip out everything and replace it. So what we're able to do is we're able to say, keep your existing hardware, put our software on top. You now have a modern-based, cloud-based system, and you can do everything you want to do without having to repaint the house or change the wires every few years, because everything is now on the cloud. So.
Cool.
I think it's important to note that we've said it here, business doesn't just stop when we want to put new stuff in, right? We have to continue to maintain all of the business that we're running today as we try to evolve into what is the future. And I think we're changing what is the future every day. And I think you missed a plug early on of there's work done by organizations like RTN for like the API standardization work, because we realize we can't just do it alone. If you create an API standard and you create an API standard, we have to make sure that we're getting that out to the masses. So I think, one, working in the confines of the groups that we work with to make use of those things like technology standardization, API standardization, and then just remember, the business doesn't stop when we want to put in these new things, and it's not fun to go and rip and replace technology. Nobody wants to go through 100 or 500 or 1,000 stores and just rip everything out because they want to. They do it because they need to. Consumers are dictating what we're doing. So it's no surprise to me that almost 70% of the budget here is maintaining new systems, but I think as we continue to evolve, move into more cloud-based approaches, API-driven, we'll see that go down because they'll be able to do things in tandem instead of, in parallel.
Cool. Thank you, Court. I want to stick with you because I did want to ask also about these allocations and our discussion of platform-based. It seems like a natural for security, in the case of Fortinet. What are your thoughts there?
I think we're seeing a lot of organizations. I had a session yesterday talking about just the sheer amount of vulnerabilities that are out there. It's anywhere 200,000 or so, and that continues to grow as we put out more IoT, OT makes its way into these organizations as we try to create better efficiencies and things like that. There's more vulnerabilities than ever before. Traditionally, what we've seen is, here's the problem here from a security standpoint, let me deploy that. And here's this one, let me deploy that. It's kind of been whack-a-mole. We've point product ourselves to death. So it's not unusual to see organizations have 10, 20, 30 plus things in their environment. What we're seeing now is moving into more of composable networks and consumable platforms. I think you'll see things like the Gartner cybersecurity mesh architecture saying everything has to talk to each other. You don't have to buy one product necessarily, but they should all be providing insight and telemetry to make sure that you have a good view of your entire environment. So moving from that 20, 30, 40 into 5 manageable platforms, and that includes things like POS, that includes things like the network. Everything should be feeding into each other because we talked about it. The bad guys only have to be right once, and we have to protect everything.
I like that. Thank you. We're going to move to our next data set. We asked restaurant operators to identify their top 3 strategic goals for 2023. And so the percentages you're seeing up here are the percentage of operators who identified these. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You've got it right there. But the top 3 have stayed fairly consistent the last few years. 63% identified, improving digital customer engagement. I think you all have thoughts about that. 54% improve business analytics, of course. 46% improve employee productivity and retention. Possibly hotter than ever. I would love to dig into that. Peter, do you have any thoughts about this top goal of digital engagement?
Not too many. That just speaks to what everybody wants to do. They want to move to a new type of system that supports modern ways of addressing the customer needs.
Yeah, I feel
Cool. Court, I'm basing this a little bit on what we talked about yesterday, or what you talked about yesterday in the cybersecurity, that some of these goals also raise new risks, new security risks. I know you have thoughts about that.
You add new things to create touch points for the customer. So you meet the customer where they want to be met, and that means you're opening more channels. More channels means more vectors than ever before. And the vast majority of threats that are successful in the industry they're human related. They're social engineering, they're misconfigurations, they're all of these things. So the more pieces we add, the more cogs we add into this, the more we're opening ourselves up to risk. So I'm honestly surprised that security is maybe not a little bit farther up there as top tech investments, but it really never is. It's always competing for resources with marketing and the brand and everything else, and that's fine because that needs to run the business. But I think we've gained more of an awareness because of the notoriety that ransomware campaigns and everything else out there have gotten. So we're seeing more focus on security, but it's often at odds with some of the top strategic goals of the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that. And I know you've made the case that security really needs to be the ground floor.
It has to be a fabric, it has to be part of everything that you're doing. And we're also seeing that more. We're working directly with partners, working with the POS providers, that they're seeing that these organizations, they just want to consume technology and they want to have some of these things built in. Mm-hmm. They don't want to buy this product for this. Hey, if it's a POS, maybe we can have security embedded into that. Mm-hmm. And just any of their technology they consolidate, they're looking to do that.
Yeah. Mike, your thoughts from your brand point of view, these strategic goals.
Yeah, I mean, as a solution architect in Cox Business, just talking to when we're doing the design, the top one I think is the biggest, again, going back to that decommoditization. There's our big ROI, and there's almost like a healthy fear. But I would also say that on the security side, what I find that works is that a lot of this stuff too is, since we're in like this new frontier of, retail is really like high tech now, really, when you think about it. The last 50 years, things have been basically the same, and now things are really rapidly and changing. And a lot of what has to happen is POCs, where we try these different techniques out, we tie the data together, the different devices all need to be talking together, and getting to that point. But when you build a real zero trust environment, it allows you to be able to try out POCs in a very non-drama-free way where, hey, I'm just going to try this one application. I'm going to do it in this one location and with this one vendor and try it out. And because that is real granular security, you can do it end-to-end without anybody trading a lot of hardware. A lot of times you don't have to do any hardware. It's all in the cloud, right? Maybe there's a couple things here or there, but it's very easy to do POCs and try these things out. And when you try things out and it really changes in your mind. Like, it's no longer hypothetical. You can see the benefit. Then you can, in that fashion, continue to roll it out. And zero trust from the security standpoint, which obviously security is important just in and of itself, but understanding that now allows you to design an architecture in a more flexible way is really beneficial.
That's a fantastic point, and it's it allows security to be ingrained into the business, where they're not the ones that say no, they're the ones that say yes, you can do that because we've allowed you a responsible and secure way to deploy new stuff.
Cool, thank you guys. Our next data set is, I see it sometimes as a little bit of the flip side of, we ask for strategic goals. Fair enough, we got to also ask, what are your top challenges? So it was the same kind of question, asking operators to identify their top 3. And so the percentages you see here, 58% difficulty integrating with legacy systems. This is a refrain year over year, and part of this panel, it's an important part of the discussion. 58% cite lack of sufficient IT budget, 46% lack of skilled technology resources in-house. In some ways, these align with the strategic goals, like here's what we want to accomplish and here's our biggest challenges, and I think that makes good sense. Court, let's start with you. I want to hear from all three of you about, from your brand points of view, what are some critical considerations for these challenges?
You look at a restaurant, and there's high turnover in a lot of these restaurant organizations, and so not only are they having lack of skilled professionals or just anybody behind the scenes, and they're using technology to augment that, the pool for skilled IT professionals is very, very small. And we're all fighting for those same resources, and so we need to use technology to kind of augment that, the same way we're doing that inside of the restaurant. And honestly, the lack of skilled professionals inside of the restaurant, being a human firewall, spotting when things are wrong, creates even more of a burden for the IT teams. We don't have skilled hands at all of these stores. So I like some of the themes that I've heard at MURTEC this year about, let's just try to simplify it. Let's make security easier to consume for everybody. Let them move humans from the weakest link into the first line of defense or even the last line of defense. And so we start to get to where maybe I don't need as many skilled IT professionals because I can both use technology and then retrain or reskill my existing staff to kind of spot some of those things for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Mike, from the point of view of a Cox business, what do you think of these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, so when I'm in the managed services area of it, I think of it a lot. I mean, and every organization is different, but people that I talk to, it's a lot like the doctor, right? You had the doctor who fed the whole town. It was Bob, right, or whatever, Bill. He did the whole town. And now you have specialists, right? The doctor, your primary care physician is just kind of like this gateway that sends you in different locations. So there's a lot of that, understanding that there's a lot of specialty now in the gear. Like I have my CCIE, and when I first got it, I'm probably dating myself, there was really just one, route and switch. Now there's so many different ones. And there's so many different certifications that are just as equally as good. And it's just that whole mentality that understanding that you can dig so deep in any one of those venues. So when I think about it from my standpoint, and what I deal with is really about integration, right? So SDN is great in the sense that, and Fortinet is one of the best. I love their product. We use their product in our rollouts.
I didn't tell them to say that.
I know, but it's true. We like it. But it does have that full SDN suite, right? We can go Wi-Fi, switch, firewall, SD-WAN, all tied together, single pane of glass, single control plane. But at the same time, that's not where most people are. I mean, it'd be great if we could all do greenfield. So SDN, the one side effect of it is how do you really get that true SDN experience if you're not dealing with the same hardware vendor? You alluded to like API, open API, but obviously every vendor wants to make it special. Always wanted to go with them, and it makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's understanding that you may need help and assistance in getting that entirely tied together, that part of it. And then what I'm seeing a lot of is that SD-WAN is not old technology, but a lot have rolled it out now, and it's just being slightly leveraged, the API capabilities in that in data collection and being able to leverage that data. So when you have point of sale data that you're collecting, say like with Trey or whatnot, and you have that as a big data, you can also compare it to what is that affecting, or what do I see on my SD-WAN, my other parts of the network, and really get deep into it. And what I've learned is talking to data scientists, what really makes a great data scientist, it reminds me back of my philosophy days, like Aristotle, Socrates, where they would talk about—
All Greeks.
Yes, all Greeks. That's why I brought it up, exactly. Is that they could come up with a few data points, a few definitions that they knew to be true from the data, and they could build all these assumptions from there. So think of it like the Washington Monument, where it's like a small skinny tower that goes up. And if you have good data scientists, that's not only on the network side, say, for myself, we're collecting, getting all that data pulled together, but then you have the right tools to actually use that data and come up. It's amazing the amount of predictions that you can make from certain initial principal data points that you have, like that Washington Monument. You can build a higher tower, the better your data scientists are. But it's just a way to think about it.
Yeah, I like it. Peter, I know you and I have spoken about, you've literally dealt with legacy and integration with some of your customers.
Definitely. So what we see, speaking to big restaurant brands specifically, is that they have all these issues. They have issues with integration, they have issues with budgets and so on and so forth, but it's because they're stuck on technology that's antiquated in many cases, specifically the POS. In some cases, it's decades old. I'll give you a story with Dine Brands. Dine Brands owns Applebee's and IHOP. And about 5 years ago, they decided they had enough of their integration challenges trying to integrate an old school POS system into tablets, into online ordering, into everything that it takes to run restaurants these days. So they went out there and they did a large RFP. They looked at 82 different point of sale vendors to try to select the one that they would go with. They ended up making a selection years ago, wasn't the right selection, went back to the drawing board, looked at everybody again, and then they finally settled on Trey for IHOP, and we signed an agreement with them in 2021. And what we're able to help them do again is help them without breaking their existing infrastructure, upgrade their system so that none of these stay a challenge. Integrations are no longer a challenge. The system is open, integrations are easy, and so on and so forth. So we're currently in about half of these IHOP locations, about 700 of them, and will be fully rolled out by May. We're doing about 60 locations per week. And because it's only a software replacement, it's extremely simple to replace the existing POS. Within an hour, while the restaurant is open, it starts with their old POS, and an hour later, it's running on Tray.
Cool. Thank you, Peter. I'm going to move to the next data set. This speaks to the implementation of off-prem solutions. Back 2 years ago in 2021, when I first collaborated with Dr. Kim on this study, she suggested, we really need a question about adoption of off-prem solutions. And now, of course, it feels absolutely natural. We speak a lot at this conference about how the pandemic accelerated certain things. Off-prem was certainly one of them. So we're seeing near universal adoption of certain things. I don't want to belabor the obvious. These guys have insights that sort of go beyond the obvious here. These percentages you see are restaurants that have either adopted or plan to adopt in 2023, which in some cases is a little bit aspirational, but we're seeing some significant numbers here. 92% of respondents have already implemented online ordering for pickup, or they plan to add. 8% plan to add in 2023. I'm not going to read all of them, just the top ones. Catering has rocketed to near the top of this list over the last few years at 79%, with 8% planning to add. Third-party delivery, 75%, with 4% planning to add. I would suggest those who haven't implemented it yet maybe are sort of diehards. I don't know. But I'd love to open it up to your impressions of this level of off-prem investment, and also if there are things that aren't being invested in that you feel maybe belong on this list. Let's start with Mike.
Yeah, the catering one that you brought up there, it's amazing. Like the last few parties in my own neighborhood that I've gone to were catered, like the cocktail party at the house. Normally, like 10 years ago, it would just be a few beers that was in like a cooler. So it's kind of interesting how it has become a bigger thing. But overall, what I see it from, again, the service provider, network architect side, is the amount of technology that they're now that now is being depended on. So whether you're going into these locations, whether they have it's the Wi-Fi now is becoming more integral. It's not just guests anymore. Whether it's the amount that the point of sale is doing, it's other devices that are like, I don't know if you've walked the show floor where you look at the ones that actually track the vehicles as they're coming in, and all these things that the network has to work inside, because again, those are Wi-Fi based in the store. So one of the things that we've been working on as well is that, okay, so you have SD-WAN maybe to help out with the redundant links and having that reliable connectivity, but also being able to help out some of these companies that are expanding so rapidly, that are supporting these restaurants to start leveraging like the edge. So a lot of them are in Azure, AWS, and they really need to start being able to leverage the edge, maybe manage it centrally from the cloud still, but be able to push things to the edge to enhance the performance. But also one of the things is sort of a Trojan horse thing, another Greek term, right? Is
full of them today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm trying. All right. So is that when we put circuits in, having the ability to actually put the compute inside, because anytime we put a circuit in, you have your CPE, your customer premise gear has to be there. So why not make that useful to to maybe the white box?
How much CPU is in there?
Well, we can talk about that. Yeah, it varies. But yeah, so you have that x86, that memory compute and whatnot, that's included. And because we already have to put a box in there, it's very minimal cost. And now with the OSs underlying, they're very mesh oriented. And so they allow you to, maybe you're leveraging the edge, the cloud, but then if you lose connectivity, important essential stuff is still occurring until that connection comes back. So all that type of thing where it's understanding, and there's that balance, right? Where you want to move everything to the cloud, but you also don't want everything to go offline if you lose connectivity. So it's that finding that balance.
Yeah,
so.
That's great, Mike. We're going to hear from Peter and Courtney in just a second. I just wanted to let you know, after this data set, we're going to pivot to questions from the audience. So I just wanted to alert our mic runner, and also those of you who may want to ask questions of these guys, jot it down or plan your question. Peter, I know you and I have spoken about how some brands that you work with are especially leaning into off-prem.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, the offline question, it's a great one. No restaurant today can go with a cloud-based system that cannot run offline. So you have to have offline mode, meaning if you lose the network, all the devices have to communicate to each other. You have to be able to power every single terminal, all the KDSs, everything needs to talk to each other. And of course, Trey does that. I want to tell you about a client that took the off-prem investment to a whole new level. They're called Brooklyn Dumpling Shop. They sold 300 locations already. They're rolled out, I think, 15 or 20 already. But they reinvented the automat, effectively. There's no servers. There's no counter when you go to the restaurant. You just are presented with kiosks or QR code that you can scan on your phone and place an order and pay. And then you get a QR code by text that you can scan at a food locker, and then you take your food from a food locker. So at no point do you interact with a human other than a greeter to tell you about the experience and help you ordering, et cetera, et cetera. So they took this whole, the off-prem online ordering to a whole new level and completely changed the operation. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it gives you a sense of how far people are taking it, and it's really working for them. So, of course, minimize the staff cost is the number one expense for restaurants is staff. If you find technologies that help you reduce the amount of expense that you have to pay on staff, then you improve your operations, you improve your margins, you make everything faster. And these guys, BDS, were able to take it to a whole new level. And if you want to read more, you can go on our website. I think we're going to have a case study at trade.com.
Cool. And as a native New Yorker, I appreciate your reference to Brooklyn dumplings. Courtney, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, just quickly so we can get to questions. So I think, we heard from, Vadim at Taco Bell and their new concepts of maybe not to that level, but more drive-through, more curbside, more online ordering. And I think what we've seen is what used to be a thing that everybody wanted to do if you were on the network and security team. You really wanted the marketing and technology teams to allow you to have site reliability engineering, build it with resiliency and redundancy and performance in mind. But it was at odds with the business. But now what they're seeing is, look, I'm gaining 5 to 7 to 10% incremental unique sales through my digital channels. I can't live without this. Even if it has an offline mode, it's not the same mode as you'd have if you're online. People can't make online orders coming in. What happens if the order is made, they come in to pick up and the POS goes down? Do they even know where that customer is inside of the organization? So what they're seeing is things like SD-WAN. Network connectivity is not a nice to have anymore. Yeah. It's an absolutely, I have to have it. So where you previously saw organizations have one internet connection, now they got 2, maybe 3. Where they weren't load balancing before, one was just a break glass. Well, now they're using them at the exact same time because they want to gain those efficiencies of scale of buying all of these and using them how they're supposed to be used. So what we've seen is the technology that was previously nice to have and our network and security teams had to fight to get in. Now marketing and all these sub-organizations are saying, well, we have to have that. Yes, absolutely. The cost of not having that, being down for just 5-10 minutes is exponentially more cost than the hardware or software or anything else put in to protect that customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been a great conversation, and I know you guys have questions for our panel. Raise your hand. I don't see well, but our mic runner.
Yep, here I am. Anyone have any questions? Raise your hand.
One in the middle.
Oh, I have one over here, Robert.
I guess I have 2 questions. They're both related. The first is, when you did the survey to the respondents, did you see, were the responses pretty consistent based on the size of the operator?
That's a great question. We sometimes cross-matrix that, but in this case, I don't off the top of my head have answers about that. It's a great question.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess for the speakers, I was wondering, were there any statistics here that just didn't fit your reality of what you're saying? Is there something that you see in the market that's very different from what we see on the stats here?
Well, I would think the numbers, these are kind of, a lot of these are the same every year. Like, hey, we see this growing, budgets grow a little bit. It doesn't seem, nothing's really earth-shattering, nothing that we haven't seen before. I think what I would expect to see more is something new, something that we didn't expect before. I hear a lot about AI being actually operationalized versus it being something that was, oh, that's kind of cool. We're chasing a shiny thing, but it's being used inside of the organizations more than before. So maybe that's why we're not necessarily seeing it, something jump up new, because we've always been trying to use machine learning or AI for something. I think what we're getting to now is actually being able to operationalize and move away from, it's not digital transformation. These things aren't transformative. How do I use these technologies to be differentiated? You'll go to me versus them because we all had AI. We all had all these things, but I'm using it better than the one down the street.
Yeah, and like Mike spoke to the last mile experience, which the meal could be great, but if your last mile experience of paying is awful, you might not come back. So,
Right, exactly.
we do have, there's some data that was a bit surprising to me. There's a new level of confidence among restaurants in their business analytics, and that was very nice. That was very nice to see. It's still not like skyrocketing, 90% confidence, but it rises each year, and that's. Well, I want to thank Peter Kellis from Tray, Mike Penney from Cox Business, and Courtney Radke from Fortinet for this thought leadership.